Hi, we're interested in some wine this evening, please.
Wonderful. How about a Chateau Margaux 2009 Balthasar for $4,062? Or the Domaine de la Romance Conti Montrachet, a wonderful white for $4,810. And of course, there's the Domaine de la Romance Conti 1990 for $20,975.
Wow, those all sound great, but I think I'll have this one here. That looks pretty amazing. It's from something called Charles Shaw Winery. Vintage September 2017. Served in a cone-shaped paper cup, too, and for only $4 a case. Perfect!
Do you live, eat, and sleep the hotel industry? Looking to brush up on your game? You've come to the right place. Welcome to No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast, with your host, Glenn Hausman.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to this week's episode of No Vacancy with me, Glenn Hausman. I'm absolutely thrilled that week after week you tune in to hear what I have to say. Now, if only my wife would listen to what I have to say every once in a while, it would be a perfect world, but thankfully I have each and every one of you supporting the show. And speaking of supporting the show, make sure you check out my sponsors, Kevin Barry Fine Art. They do great work, and also Bar Tech Mini Bars. They will help improve your business bottom line. Don't buy into any of that BS that you see about how mini bars are not good for you. They will only help make you money. And also, while I'm sitting here begging for attention, make sure you watch my stuff on HereToStay.tv, brought to you by Bridge Street Global. That's a lot of fun stuff, talking about service departments, great interviews and videos and news reports on alternative accommodations. And also, listen, if you don't like me on iTunes, I don't know what to tell you at this point anymore. It's just hurtful that you're not liking me on iTunes. So please do that. Do your best. I'm not asking you for much. I just need for that. It really helps. It goes a long way. Make sure that more folks get to see us in iTunes. And also, while we're at it, share the show with a friend. And speaking of friends, I got a brand new one here with me today. I'm really excited to have someone co-hosting this part of the show with me, and that's Mr. Roger A. Miller, president of R.A. Miller Hospitality, Sales and Marketing Services and Consulting. Roger, sir, how are you?
I'm excellent today, Glenn. How are you doing today?
I'm glad that you're excellent after hearing all of my, shameless begging and pleading over there at the first part of the conversation.
No, I think you did an excellent job. You should hear me at home.
Well, thank you. I do appreciate that, Roger. Roger, you're new to the show. I typically have a rotating group of guests for this first part of the show, and we don't know who you are, although many people know who you are. The audience, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how you came to be a sales and marketing services consultant?
Sure, Glenn. I'd be glad. Well, I'm a 40-year veteran of multi-unit sales and marketing. I started out as believe it or not, a dishwasher in college. And
I do believe that, Roger, because so many people in this business have achieved such great things starting out in positions such as that.
Well, I did. I worked about every position in the hotel except in the restaurant where they chased me out with knives because I'm horrible with food. So I progressed on to a single-unit hotel, and after a year and a half, I got very lucky and was made a director or vice president of sales and marketing for my first multi-unit company. Mm-hmm. I, over the 40 years, have represented 225 properties, and they range anywhere from 60 to 600 rooms. Total assets about $2.5 billion, and I've worked in 42 states, and I have been an investor and owner in over 60 hotels.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. So you've been around. You pretty much got this business on lockdown, and it's interesting to me. You've been here for 40 years, and so much has changed in that time. And I want to talk about where we are today and where we're going forward. But I'm curious as to know what your impression is of the business, what it was like 40 years ago in 1977. I just did that math right there off the top of my head. I didn't need a calculator. I'm very excited about that. So, Roger, what was it like then compared to now?
Boy, you just dusted off my archives pretty quick.
I know. I tried to give you a little lead time so you could, you could conjure up some of those memories.
Yeah, well, it's gonna need a heck of a lot more than that. It's actually very, very interesting because when I work with companies and work with hotels, you usually find a either mix of 70-30 or 80-20, where companies are doing things that were done 40 years ago, or companies are doing things that are just 5 years or longer. Very rarely do you find, well, I shouldn't say very rarely, but there are very few times that you find a company that has that perfect blend and mix of 50-50. And I always try to say, you know, when you're trying to lead a division of hotels, or you're trying to work with a hotel team, you try to keep things simple, you know, less is more. So I take 2 or 3 things from what I've learned in the past over the 40 years, and I try to mix them with today's most current technology and ways of doing sales and marketing. And I try to break it down into 3 areas in both the past and the present. The first one in the past is that you have to set realistic, proactive sales goals and budgets and accountability. And by proactive sales efforts, I mean client appointments, and qualified outside sales calls, luncheons, site inspections, and bids and proposals. Second,
I want to tease that a little bit out, because it seems to me that's a really important lesson for people to understand, because we've been now breaking records for several years. So for folks that are just entering the business, or folks that have forgotten how bad the Great Recession was, I think sometimes you forget how critical that proactive sales approach is, rather than just being an order taker.
No, that's very, very true. I mean, if you don't practice proactive sales, then it becomes a lost art. And whether you're in excellent times or average times or down times, you have to realize that relationship building is going to be key in every aspect of the cycle, and proactive sales are part of that relationship building.
Right. So how does that work, and how could we do it well? Because, you know, one of the things that I've tried to do over my career, and I've been at it for, you know, probably half the time that you've been at it in my 20 years, is I always want to go out and be visible and try to be part of the conversation. And my wife was always like, even in the early parts of our relationship, and before, you know, when we first started getting together, she's like, why do you go to all these events? What do you get out of it? And to me, it's not what you get out of it that night. It's building a portfolio of people over time, which things will eventually happen. I've had very fortunate experiences of forging a relationship, and literally 10 years go by and nothing, and then all of a sudden they engage you in something. And I assume that hotel room sales is kind of the same idea.
Oh, it's exactly right, Glenn. It's like building a house. You know, you pour a slab first, and then you build the building on top of the slab. And that's what you have to do when you're in hotel sales and marketing. As many other industries, you have to build those relationships early on, and you have to cultivate them, and you can't expect immediate results. Sometimes you get really lucky and you're really good, and you do, but other times it could be a year, 2 or 3 years. You just have to be patient. You have to be methodical about what you do.
That's very challenging and stressful for, say, somebody that's just starting out as a director of sales for a particular property. They want to have immediate success. They want to show their bosses that they're working as hard as they can. And also there's that other part of, hey, I better do get some deals done, or else I'm going to get my butt fired. So how do you make that all work in order to feel successful in your job and actually make a difference to the bottom line of the property?
It's mixed, Glenn. It really is a mix, and it's like anything else. It's like playing athletics, whether you're in college or you're playing pro ball. You know, if you don't get out there and practice it, you're never going to accomplish it. And when you go to work every day, whether you're a director of sales or you're a sales manager, or even if you're vice president of sales and marketing, you have to really be good at time management. And so on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, which are primarily the key selling days, you have to save enough time, 4 to 5 hours, 6 hours a day, in order to focus on proactive sales, while at the same time remembering you have other jobs such as emails and your action plans, that you have a couple of things, and you got a whole other slew of things to do. So you have to be good at time management.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me, and I'm glad that you brought that up, because that's really difficult. Again, I mirror it to what I'm doing in my business here. I have to get this podcast out every week. I have other responsibilities to do every week, but I have to think about, you know, what kind of clients I'm going to have for the content side of my business, or for the speaking engagements that I do. I'm already worried about 2018, of course, and thinking ahead to 2019 and 2020, and trying to get a sales funnel set for that period of time. And I think as human beings, we have a tendency to focus on the here and now and what's immediate and always say, oh, I'll put that off till later. I'll put that off till later. But the danger is you never get there, and then you're stuck in a horrible negative cycle.
Well, I think that's also being driven by today's pressures on immediate results. And, at the end of the day, it is a real estate business. And, of course, the owners, lenders, investors, banks, and financial institutions that own the building are pushing for immediate results. And we have, in some cases, lost a lot of the foresight of the fact that we're going to need to lay groundwork for the next 6, 9, 12 months and beyond. So it is a blend of mixing, what your priorities are from day to day, but never forgetting that 12 months from now, you're still going to need clients. You better be laying some type of foundation for those.
Yes, absolutely. So how do you go about and do that within the hotel sales environment?
Well, a good vice president of sales and marketing, a good general manager, and a good director of sales will have a very, very accurate sales and marketing monthly activity sheet. And by that, I mean they'll have their proactive sales goals and very well spelled out, and they'll have it by days and by amounts. They'll also have their proactive marketing activities listed. Usually 2 or 3 a month is what's correct. I see far too many hotels and companies try to put 10 or 11 things per person, which is absolutely ridiculous. When I go in and I audit a hotel and I go through their monthly activities, I find that, at most they can accomplish 2 to 3 on top of their proactive sales efforts, which is very realistic. And I always tell folks I'd rather see everything done on an A level than try to do 3 times those things on a D minus or F level. But again, it's time management. It's making sure a director of sales or above property person knows how to coach and mentor and lead that team and breaking that time, 40 to 50 hours a week into the right thing.
Right. So then what is some advice that you have in order to create the systems that will make sure that everybody in the sales department has great success?
Treat every individual like they're your only associate, sales associate. Make sure you set them up to succeed. And by that, I mean ensure that their proactive sales efforts are realistic. And by realistic, I mean a director of sales, a really good director of sales, should be able to do 10 proactive sales activities per week in addition to all their other jobs. A sales manager should be able to do at a minimum 15 of those proactive sales efforts per week and continue to do their other jobs, such as emails and their activities that the marketing plan has on them. So you have to really coach and mentor and ensure that on a daily basis, not weekly basis, but daily basis, that your associates, whether there's 2 associates, are being able to accomplish their weekly routines. And if not, then you need to have just a really good coaching session on what you can do as a leader in order to improve their daily routines.
Right. So what are some of the recommendations that you would give in order to motivate people and help them create that long-term sales funnel while also finding short-term successes?
Well, each individual is different, and that's why there are so few excellent coaches, because sometimes coaches will say one formula fits everybody, but take each individual, ensure that they understand what is expected out of them to succeed, and where they start getting a little bit on the right side or left side of it, then you need to have a cup of coffee. It doesn't need to be anything that's intimidating, but have a cup of coffee. Give them a couple hints of what you feel they could do to continue to improve either their proactive sales efforts or their activity plans or relationship building or whatever, because there very few times are there more than the strengths and weaknesses the same. I mean, you might have 4 people, but you're going to have all kinds of different strengths and weaknesses. So in coaching and mentoring, you've got to ensure that you pay attention like they're one of your children, and you got to care about those individuals.
Right.
And, that's what makes the difference between an excellent director of sales and an average director of sales. I mean, you either can identify those things and immediately address them from a positive situation, never from a negative situation. And you just have to care about people. It's all about them.
Right. So you're part coach, part parent, part motivational speaker, kind of all of those things in order to get your team to be more successful.
That's exactly right. That is exactly right. And when you start, you have to remember it's not about you. I haven't met any.
Wait, now I'm uncomfortable. If something's not about me, then I tend to lose interest. But I'll try to focus. Okay, go on. Let's go.
No. I mean, it's the same thing about above property people.
Yeah.
That was funny. It really was. Above property staff too. I mean, so many times if I see vice presidents of sales and marketing and I see regional directors try to focus on what they want and how much they know. When you go to a property, you do a visit, or you do a conference call, you've got to forget it. It's not about you. It's about that general manager. It's about that director of sales. It's about that sales team. And, you're there for one reason. You're not making any money sitting in the corporate office. The people that are sitting in the hotels are the ones making you the money.
Right.
And those are the ones that you have to totally give of yourself and be a great listener and then be a great coach. And I see a lot of times where that's not necessarily practiced, although there are several fantastic people in the United States that have been doing this for a long time that are excellent at it.
Yes, of course. Now, I do want to talk about how you mix past and present sales and marketing strategies, but I do have to complain about one thing out there that I see from the sales folks. And I wonder if you have any experience with this. Salespeople seem to be really awesome until you get to the property and it's a day of your event. Then they usually sit with you in a pre-con meeting, tell you how they're going to be there for you the entire time. And then a lot of times they promptly disappear and are never to be seen again. I find that very frustrating. And I think in the end that it winds up ending what could be a good relationship and sending people to other hotels the next time they come around. Have you seen a lot of that, or am I just making that up in my head?
No, that's done quite a bit, unfortunately, and everyone's got a different philosophy. It's probably split right down the middle, where some directors of sales and VPs of sales and marketing feel that that's the responsibility of that sales manager. There's other people like myself that feels that's two different jobs.
Yeah, it is, because they've got to be getting other business in there. They can't just sit there with the current business and they'll never get future business. So it's a weird place to be in.
That's right on the money. I mean, you're right on the money. And the only way you can avoid that is I always try to coach and teach that you got to have two different people do it. So you have your sales manager that goes out, and he's your offensive individual. They go out, get the business, and then when the client comes in, that individual has the responsibility of introducing them to the inside salesperson or the sales coordinator or the banquet coordinator or whatever, and they hand that part over so that individual is there 8-10 hours during that event or whatever, and they take care of that event while the other individual is out selling. And I think that's really something that's been missed a lot in today's sales and marketing structure, because you just can't have one person do two jobs and expect them to be perfect at both. Most of the time, if you're really good at outside sales and you're really good at being an offensive player, you're not that great of a defensive player. You're not really that good at being inside doing that, and vice versa.
Right. Yeah. Good concept, good philosophy. I'm thinking at some point in the sales process, as you get closer to the date ahead of time, maybe that's something that could be more clearly defined and say, we're excited you're doing business with us. This is the individual that's going to take care of you throughout the remainder of your journey with us. I think that would set a clearer set of expectations and eliminate some of the confusion that the customers have feeling about lost in a vacuum with a last-minute pass-off.
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, 100% agree. That's one thing that I've tried to train and teach over 40 years. In fact, when I'm on sales calls with sales managers and directors, I make sure that I mention that during the sales call. I always say that, hey, I'm the offensive guy. I'm out here. Anytime you need anything in your office or you have any issues, please come to me. But when you come to my property, then John or Jane Doe will be the person that's going to look after you 100% of the time. So you're actually being double teamed. And that always makes that individual feel so much better that they're not going to be dropped in the cracks.
Yes, exactly. And that's the worst, because if you're on site at an event and something comes up, either it's something extremely positive or, God forbid, something negative that happens, you want to feel that connection with the property as a customer. And I bet that goes a long way in terms of making people have a great glow about the property when they consider coming back a second time.
Oh, totally does. And it also does not frustrate your sales manager, your director of sales, because, it's a funny thing. The more successful you are in your outside sales and your relationship building, the more bookings you have, the more you get trapped inside if you do it the other way. And that frustrates a very good sales manager that's out there trying to book more business and be more, proactive in getting new contracts. And so that when you frustrate a salesperson, then you're on your way to losing a good salesperson and losing business too.
And that's something that's much more important today than ever before, because again, as we started off this conversation by saying we're really at the height of the market right now. And I'm not talking again about people, being order takers as opposed to proactive sales, but it is a situation where we have essentially full employment and people are changing jobs pretty regularly right now because we're at the top of that cycle. And you've got to be more careful than ever as to not to lose someone to that hotel down the road for a few dollars more because they think they're going to be treated better. If you treat your staff great, if you give them that motivation and encouragement in order to be successful within the sales arena, then I think that they're less likely to move around for a few extra dollars in salary.
Well, and you hit on a point there that's very, very critical to the success of a hotel long term, and that's turnover. And every time you turn a salesperson over, whether it's a director of sales or sales manager, you're costing that hotel anywhere between 4 months and probably 9 months of proactive sales efforts and results. So it's really critical to make sure that individual set up succeed and they understand what's expected of them and they feel very good about the job. And, you say we're at the top of the cycle, and that's very, very true. I mean, I think next year it's predicted to RevPAR index is only predicted to go up about 2.4%.
Right, and the supply demand is turning. Occupancy is going to shift downwards. So I think we're actually on the way down, but we just don't recognize it yet. And I'm trying really hard to get people to start playing stronger offense right now.
Well, we always recognize things too late. I mean, our industry, as well as many other industries, are the same way. They ride that cycle, and they just think that pony is going to run and run and run and run. And, being around for 40 years, I can promise you that's not going to happen. And sometimes, it's basically almost flat right now when you say 2.4. When you add the cost increases to what's going to happen next year, you're almost as flat when you're looking at break-even point on that. But the thing today is that the expectations, because we've run so well, are still very, very high. So you would think that the budgets today, everybody's hitting their budgets and everybody's just, doing everything perfectly. And that's not the case. I mean, most people's budgets are extremely high. I mean, we've been going on a 4 to 6 to an 8% increase almost every year of revenue, and that's pretty tough to do even in good times. So proactive sales efforts have actually been just as needed over the last 5 to 10 years as they are needed in down cycles simply because of the high expectations.
Yep. Okay. So 2/3 of the way into our conversation, let's talk about the first of our topics, mixing that past and present sales and marketing strategies, which you say is a must, not a choice. I think we'll probably just wind up covering this one and save the others for another time. So tell me a little bit about keeping 1 foot in the past, 1 foot in the present with a keen eye on the future when it comes to sales and marketing strategies.
Well, we've already talked about proactive sales efforts. Mm-hmm. I think, too, that, again, we've touched on this. You have to make sure that each sales manager and your director of sales, too, has 2 to 3 really good monthly sales and marketing action plan activities. And I say that by per market segment. And, again, I get so frustrated when I go in and I see a hotel have 8 or 10 per person. So make sure less is more, make sure those are on target. I also, from the past, client appreciation parties, community events, and company of the month programs are still critical to the success of long-term client relationships. I mean, again, it's a lost art if you don't practice it. And those are the 3 things: proactive sales, strong 2 to 3 action plans, and community events that I think from the past have got to be practiced today. Now, when you mix that with 3 things from the present and in the future, then I think you've got a whole picture. And the 3 things from the present is, of course, maximizing all your brand electronic resources, your programs, your promotions, and major contacts. So many times I take a look and work with a hotel, and they're not utilizing their brand resources. That
drives me crazy, Roger, because the brands spend a lot of time, effort, and money rolling out all of these programs. I go to so many of their conferences every single year, and they tell you about these great programs, and then hardly anybody utilizes them. It's you're already paying for it. Why aren't you maximizing your opportunity with these layups that these companies give you?
Well, I can tell you, as an investor and an owner of 60 hotels, it drives me up a wall. The good part that I had was I was also vice president of sales and marketing for those firms, so I was able to take that upon myself and ensure that I worked with each hotel general manager and director of sales in utilizing those brand resources, programs, and promotions. Because if you're paying what you're paying for any of the brands, the major brands, you're paying a lot, and by not using those, you're actually just totally wasting your brand dollars, and you're not maximizing what you need to do. And that does translate into asset loss. I mean, I always tell folks that own hotels, your asset's not standing still. It's either going forward or going backwards. And one of the things that you can ensure that's going forward is to work with your teams and your sales departments, and that they are utilizing all your brand programs and stuff. It's just a sin not to do that. But again, it's a training issue. It's putting a priority on that issue. And vice presidents of sales and marketing and vice presidents of operations have to put that at the top of their list when they're on properties working with their sales team and their general managers. Also, the last thing is maximizing the cost-effective market intelligence related production services. There's never been more market intelligence out there, either for free or for sale, than ever. In 40 years, I've never seen so much market intelligence. I can remember back in the 70s and 80s where, right, geez, well, you had to go out and do cold calls and go up and down buildings and make lists.
Right. It used to be the market intelligence was just the guy in the hotel that's been around longest.
That's exactly right. And you hope that he remembers that if he's been around that long sometimes. No, you're right on the money. Today, there is some excellent market intelligence. Now, having said that, you've got to know how to use the market intelligence, and you've got to really put a high priority on it. So, there too, just because you have the answers doesn't mean you can solve the problems all the time. But those are the 6 things. And again, it sounds real easy, but I can promise you when you see them on a list and you try to coach and you try to mentor and you try to work with a sales team, those 6 things are gigantic, and it's more than enough to ensure your success if you can do them on, again, an A level. I see just so many operations work on a C- level or B- level or tilted. And if you do these 50-50 past to present, you're going to be pretty successful.
How much of the time is it that people just aren't educated on success strategies compared to situations where you just don't have the right people involved at that particular property?
Wow, you just brought up something that could be a 3-hour sermon.
I know. Well, you could summarize it, though, in 8 seconds. That'd be great.
Oh, yeah. Anybody knows me knows that's impossible. I can't say my name in 8 seconds. Again, it goes back to you're only as good as the people at the top. And the vice president of sales and marketing, the vice president of operations of an organization has to set the pace, has to set the tone, and has to set the trend of what's important and what's not. So they have to be very clear about their expectations and how to go about the job and not be a dictator at the same time. So, when you lay the things out that we just talked about, again, it's their responsibility to ensure that the general manager and the director of sales on property is trained and has the resources in order to accomplish all these things that you need to be accomplished. So it's a training issue, it's a caring issue, and it's, I hate to say it, but it's the experience level where you have to be around long enough to know how important all these things are, because these folks put you where you are. I mean, I've been a vice president of sales and marketing for 40 years, and all my successes that I've ever had, I have had very little to do with. It's been the people that have worked with me and for me that put me where I am. It has very little to do about how good I am, because I'm, it's all about the other people.
Could you get me one of those jobs where I can find success and not actually have to do anything? That'd be awesome.
Well, you have to do something.
I know.
You have to care about people, the point is...
So then I'll never get one of those jobs. Damn it.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all.
All right, interesting. All right, one last question for you. Now, you said you've been involved in hotel ownership. You've got points in 50-plus type projects. Now, I've got a lot of hotels that I've been a part of, but unfortunately they were all turning 4 houses on the Monopoly board into a hotel, not actual hotels. So how do you actually get involved in the investment side of the business when you're a small potatoes guy kind of like me looking to think ahead, a couple of decades of their retirement?
Well, obviously, there's all kinds of situations where you have public companies, you have REITs. You can get in traditional ways like that. Guys like me, I'll be honest with you, just get lucky.
Yeah.
I was able to team up with a gentleman, Robert Coleman's father, about the middle of my career, and they were very generous, and they brought me on board, and I worked as hard as I could, and they saw some potential in me. So they made it available for me to invest money and start out at one hotel or two hotels, and then those work, and you roll it over to 3 or 4 hotels. Those roll over to 8. And you just keep working hard, and you just get very, very lucky, and you surround yourself with some phenomenal people. And if it wasn't for Robert Coleman's father and some other folks, I would have never gotten that opportunity. But it is a responsibility too. I mean, when you're given that opportunity, you have the responsibility to carry much more than your normal weight. And that's fair. That's perfectly fair. And
I think that's good advice for all of life to begin with. Carry much more weight than people expect you to, because I think that'll immunize you against irrelevancy.
Well, no, you're right, and you have to add passion to that. I mean, this is when you put your own money into it, and when you have interest in investments, you learn very, very quick that you're either going to go up or go down. I mean, you never stay in the middle. And again, that goes back to how hard you work with your people. With the folks you're lucky enough to hire, you're lucky enough to work with, and that's where you learn really quick. You hire much better than you. And anyone that I had to work with on the corporate staff in sales and marketing or in the field, I tried to always hire the highest intelligence that I could and highest amount of experience that I could, because you learn as an investor that there's no second chance. I mean, if you lose a month and you've lost $10,000 and all your other investors have lost $10,000 with you, there's no, you don't get to redo. That's not a redo. And yes, you possibly can make that up in the upcoming months, but it's like being behind 10 runs in the 9th inning.
Yeah.
Yes, you can score 10 runs, but you've only got 3 out, and that's not too likely. So, when you start looking at sales activities and pro activities of sales teams, it means much more than just a number when you're an investor and owner, and you look at it much more seriously, and you put that little extra effort into training, you put that little extra effort into coaching. And you might stay at a property an extra day over a weekend to help them a little bit more. So you just can't dial that in possibly like you would as just a regular vice president of sales and marketing. Not that you do, but
yeah.
I know when I was a vice president of sales and marketing, I probably worked on a scale of 1 to 10 at maybe an 8.5 or a 9. But then when you become an investor, you work not at a 10, but you work at 11 or 12.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, there's one nugget that you said in there that's one of my favorite pieces of advice that I heard in my lifetime, and that is be the dumbest guy in the room as much as you possibly can, because that way, if you got smart people around you, they're going to come up with terrific ideas. They're going to be able to help move success along quickly and make you look like a pro and make it appear like you aren't actually doing anything when you really are, right, Roger?
Oh, 100%. No matter how smart or dumb you are, if you don't put folks around you that are better than you, then you have no chance of succeeding. I mean, I always get calls and saying, Roger, can you come in and fix this? Roger, I hear you can do this. Roger, can you do that? And I always tell them, I said, look, I've got every best practice from every brand in my briefcase. Mm-hmm. I've got every little secret that you could possibly want to have, for your brand. However, Roger Miller leaves after 2 days, 3 days. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have the talent to pick these pieces of wood up and do something with them, then don't hire me, because all the answers in the world aren't going to matter if you don't have somebody that can pick them up and work with them and get them accomplished. And a lot of times that's the best advice I can give someone, because I'll look at a team, and I'll give you an example. I'll look at a team and say they're behind in corporate lease business and they're missing their budget by $15,000 every month. And I'll drill down and I'll talk to the sales manager responsible for that. And I'll find out that that's the first sales manager job in corporate transit that they've ever had, right, that they were previously a Smurf sales manager. And I go, oh, my gosh, here you've got a Smurf sales manager that is put in the corporate sector, And they have no clue on how to do this. And that's just one example, but it does happen.
Well, I got to say, I'm offended. I am against slavery for little blue creatures. So I don't even know how that business exists. Of course, just joking. That's, what Smurf is, sports meetings. What does that stand for exactly again?
Yeah, it stands for sports and social and military and religious conferences and amateur sports.
Right.
And that, it's funny because when I do feasibility studies, Glenn, you'll go in and you'll talk, maybe out of 2 hours, you'll talk an hour and a half on the corporate world and how do you bring in corporate meetings and what do you think about corporate transient, yada, yada, yada. Then I have to remind people about Smurf, and I keep thinking, you know what? You got Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Those are 4 days you still got to fill, and guess what? Smurf is going to be a big deal on how you fill those days.
It's huge, and I don't know why people don't recognize that. One of the things that we do in life, and this is one of the things that I've started saying on stage is, but I usually apply it to technology. Here I'll apply it to groups. We don't look enough at how we live our lives to find cues to be more successful in our hotel lives. Meaning, chances are a lot of you folks out there have kids that are in traveling sports teams. It's become a huge business. Yet, are you focusing at your hotel on trying to get that business? It's huge. I know people that are spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on travel associated with that every year. And then, of course, there's other things like family reunions and all sorts of other stuff that you can tap into if you just think about looking at it a little bit differently.
Oh, you've got to, Glenn. I mean, amateur sports on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, weddings, and reunions are, in most markets, the three top, in that order, the three top market segments to fill your hotel. And sports and weddings and reunions are all three different segments. So you have to have people that understand what those segments mean and what the clients are like in order to go after and get them, because they're all different. They think different. They buy different, and their hot buttons are different.
Yep, absolutely. Perfect. Okay. We're a little bit over time. So, Roger, how about some final thoughts? And you got to get in a shameless plug on how we can find you.
Well, my final thought is that always remember that it's about the other folks that are working in the field every day. It's about your general managers, your directors, and your sales managers. Put them first. Forget your title as a VP or above. Forget all the egos, and be a servant. Serve those folks. Utilize your technical skills over the years, your coaching and mentoring skills, and be there for them. So, just put everybody else first. You can reach me on my email at ramiller718@gmail.com, or my telephone number is 678-360-8559. And I am on LinkedIn, which is probably one of the best places to start because it has a very deep dive on what I've done and what I do.
Yep.
So, Glenn, thank you very much.
Cool. Does it bother you that there are 717 people ahead of you on the R.A. Miller Gmail thing?
Well, that's why I put R.A. Miller 718.
I think that would.
Right.
If I had to be, G.A. Hausman 718, I'd be very sad about that. But you're a better man than me, Roger. Make sure you connect with Roger Miller on LinkedIn at his email. And I want to thank each and every one of you for listening to what he had to say. Now, stick around because after the commercial break, we've got a great interview with Larry Hambro. He's the VP of Brand Operations with Hawthorn Suites by Wyndham at Windham Hotel Group. And he's going to share all about what that brand is up to and why that sector is so critical to the future success of the hospitality industry. So stick around, and we'll be right back after this message.
Have a question for your host, Glenn? Tweet him now at Traveling Glenn. No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast. We'll be right back.
Hey everybody, Glenn here. And if you're like me, then I know that you love terrific art. Art that creates a sense of place. Art that tells a story of where you are. Art that adds a level of detail that you can't get anywhere else. And great folks that do this, Kevin Barry Fine Art Associates. You can find them online at kevinbarryfineart.com, and I highly encourage that you check them out. One recent project that I'm totally in love with is the Fairmont, Washington, D.C., where they created a custom project with a local artist and they created some of this on site. They actually created a multi-dimensional wall sculpture from gold blocks, which is an abstracted map grid of the Washington, D.C. area. It's got different elevations to it and looks absolutely fantastic. It was done along with Deborah Forrest and Amanda Jackson of Forrest Perkins, which is now Perkins Eastman. And they all work together to create this fabulous new look. So if you want to create a fabulous new look for your hotel, or if you just love great art, check out KevinBarryFineArt.com or give him a call at 310-945-2655. Let him know Glenn sent you.
Back to the show. It's No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast with your host, Glenn Hausman.
All right, everybody. So, one of the things I've been doing is I've been thinking a lot about extended stay hotels. You've been watching and hearing and listening to all my coverage on it because I think it's a category that hasn't been paid enough attention to. And it's one of those things that have kind of unexpectedly become part of the overall scene. I happen to like extended stay hotels enough, and it's not just because of my role at Here to Stay TV, where I focus on extended stay hotels and service apartment business, but it's more than that. It's that there's something about the comfort, the experience, the overall enjoyment of that particular product when I stay there. So I'm a little bit infatuated with it. So to share in my infatuation and excitement about this, and maybe even to talk about a place to get great burritos, I've got a guy named Larry Hambro. He's the brand vice president with Hawthorn Suites by Wyndham, and he's here with me right now. Larry, how are you, sir?
I am awesome, Glenn. Thanks for asking.
Well, I'm really glad to be speaking to you, and I want you to know that it's enjoyable to speak to you. We never had a chance to speak before, except for the 5 minutes before I hit the record button over here. And I'm curious as to, for people listening, we were talking about burritos and hamburgers and all the important stuff that adds important texture to our lives. But Larry, how did you wind up getting involved in the hospitality industry, and how long have you been around it?
I have been in the hospitality industry officially more years than the guy I interviewed yesterday
right.
for a job. I've been doing this over 25 years.
All right.
I actually started in Atlantic City in a casino.
Oh, which one?
I worked for Resorts International in what we termed charter marketing, which is a glamorous term for bus marketing.
Oh.
and when you discuss first jobs out of college, this is not the job you want to brag about. This is the job you want to look back on and say, if you think you had it bad, let me tell you what I did.
Well, let me tell you what I did. I used to take the bus from Grand Central in Manhattan down to Atlantic City via one of those quote-unquote charters, and that was living hell. I got to be honest with you. The smell, oh my God.
I was the guy that jumped on the bus with my bag of coupons and welcomed you to the casino at 21 years old.
Well, I may have gotten those coupons from you and ran straight to cash in and get my roll of quarters. And gosh darn it, I love that $3 off the buffet coupon. That was like gold to me.
I will tell you, with my backpack full of bachelor arts degree behind me, having to do that was very challenging to get past my ego. To this day, I could still recant the speech that I would give every time I jumped on a bus. And I'm going to tell you, that was over 25 years ago.
All right, I got it. Before we get into the actual interview, I need to hear a highlight from the speech.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Resorts International. In several minutes from now, I will be coming down the aisle to hand you out a 3-part coupon, a $5 coupon for cash, a $5 coupon for food and beverage, and a deferred coupon for a future visit.
Ah, beautiful.
This is a Capital Trailways bus, number 275. It will leave this street at 6 p.m., not 6:01. And I would just go on from there. And I would have so much fun with that in hindsight. But let me tell you something. It was a challenge. I graduated college in one of the worst recessions that they equated the last recession to.
Oh goodness, when was that? Early 90s?
Are we still recording?
Yes, we are. But I'll edit this.
It was
part
in the mid. Let's put it this way.
Yeah.
It was in the mid 80s.
Okay, mid 80s. Okay. So you were probably promoted by the time I was old enough to get there. Not to. I
was promoted within 6 months.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
I spent 6 long months out on that street welcoming every senior citizen in a 400-mile radius.
I love it. I mean, there's something about Atlantic City back in those days which was interesting and special and exciting to be a part of because if for those of you listening, if you didn't know, at that time of history, casino gaming was really only legal in Atlantic City and the state of Nevada. So it was pretty exciting since that was before the Indian gaming regulations went into effect in the late 80s. So how cool was it being down there at that period of time?
I will tell you, my father moved down for a job. He was the entertainment director at the Claridge Casino Hotel.
Yes.
In 1980-81 period. But I would go home on summers and park cars. I will tell you that it was a phenomenal energy in town. You could, on any weekend night, you could find a waiting line of people 2 blocks long to get into a casino.
Yes, absolutely. And I will say, for everybody, again, who doesn't have any information on it, Resorts was the first casino to actually open. I believe it was owned by Merv Griffin at the time, and the first dice rolled in 1978 at Resorts International Hotel. I'm right about that, right?
You are absolutely right. 1978, 1979. But Merv Griffin bought the hotel from the original owners.
Okay. But Steve Lawrence was the first one to roll out the dice and lost $50 doing it. And for anyone who doesn't know, it's Steve and Edie of famed performers. Yeah, those were definitely the good old days, although I was a little too young to enjoy it. I know that this has nothing to do with the interview that we're supposed to be doing today, but I remember my senior citizen grandparents would take me down, and what I loved about Atlantic City was when I was 12, 13, 14 was that roll of quarters, because they used to have arcades there too, and I got to have a lot of fun putting quarters into those machines, and I got to go to all the great hotels, including the Playboy Casino Resort Hotel that was there at the time, and I would just go there and stay in the lobby and wish I was a big boy and could go into the big into the big area, and not because I loved gambling. Let's just put it that way. All right, so at some point you made your way to Wyndham, and how did you come across Hawthorn Suites by Wyndham, which I've been a fan of since Mike Levin started the company on his own many years ago before it sold and then sold again.
Oh, that is the history of the brand.
Yeah.
I share with you that passion. I love this brand. I think there's so much potential for this brand. It sits in the perfect segment at the mid-scale level. I made my way here. I was brought in to transition 16 hotels from a REIT that was changing flags for an IHG flag to Wyndham. And I was asked to come in and help with that transition. And with a great team and phenomenal support here at Wyndham, we transitioned 16 of those hotels over to Hawthorn in August of 2012. And it has been nothing but tremendous success since then. In the last 5 years, the brand has actually grown 50%.
That's terrific.
And with about 28 hotels in the pipeline, 95% of those are all new construction.
Wow, that's exciting. But I guess that makes a lot of sense that you're focused more on new construction than, creating something out of something else, because it's just a different type of experience and you need a little bit different of a footprint for an extended stay hotel, correct?
That's absolutely true. We require a certain amount of square footage, and that ties back to the passion for the extended stay segment in itself. It's seen the largest increase in demand. I think in the last, if I have this correct, it's in the last 24 quarters. It's never seen a greater expansion. I think there is approximately 5.5% supply growth this year.
Well, the good news is you don't actually have to know any real facts because we live in a fact-free world now. So, so congratulations on that.
Oh, that's too funny.
Yeah, so I'm just going to assume that everything is right on target. But yeah, you're right. This segment is growing. It's something that's being enjoyed by a lot of people, and I find it interesting that extended stay is going one way when you see a lot of mid-scale chains now with their new properties and their new brands trying to shrink the hotel room size because they're insisting, I just want to hang out in the lobby all the time. So that's one of the reasons why I'm starting to go more towards extended stay. More space, more place for me to relax. More places for me to, throw my underwear and not pick it up over the time I stay there. So I like that.
Whatever you choose to do in that room, that's up to you, Glenn. I totally agree with you. I think the demand from the segment is really a reaction to that that square footage shrinkage, and the industry itself has outperformed the transient industry every year, every quarter since 1998, with the exception of 2006.
Wow!
It has shown a 10 or at least a double-digit increase in occupancy year over year compared to the transient segment.
Wow, that's pretty interesting numbers, very compelling, and
that's a fact.
Yeah, not an alternative one, an actual fact. All right, I'm not used to dealing with real facts anymore, so I'm going to have to take a deep breath and gather my thoughts and move on. Okay, so that's really a fascinating statistic to me, but again, it makes perfect sense. I can't help but think of myself as not as a business traveler, but as a family traveler, and I might want to have a little bit more space, especially if my kids were younger and we all needed to spread out a little bit. And I used to love staying in extended stay properties when my children were younger, because what would inevitably happen is my wife would wind up cuddling in the bed with the kids, and then it'd be really quiet and they'd all fall asleep at like 8 o'clock and I had nothing to do. So being able to have area that I could go and hang out in and watch TV or get work done was always very essential to me. And you think about it, and I'm curious to know who your core clientele is, but a lot of it is people that are staying for a very long period of time, or I should say an extended stay, which makes a lot of sense. So what types of customers are you bringing into Hawthorn?
It's fairly diverse. With Hawthorn, our core clientele are business travelers who are on projects. When you consider the length of stay, we consider extended stay 5+ nights.
Yes.
So the core 5+ night guest is typically the business traveler on a project. It is the temporary nurse who is staffing a local hotel. It is the IT gentleman or woman who is on an IT project for their organization. Maybe their headquarters is in another country and they're doing a project here for any length of stay from 3 weeks to a full year in the hotel. So when we consider the length of stay and the core component of who's staying with us, our focus has to be on that guest experience.
Right.
We need to be your first friend in town. When you check into a hotel, you're checking. It's not a hotel stay any longer. It's life. And if we take our perspective is straight on to ensuring that guest's routine is maintained, they're going to enjoy that stay a little bit better. And we have the opportunity to establish a relationship with the guest. And that's what we want. We want a relationship with that guest.
Yes, and that's really important, especially for that extended stay guest who's going to be in the neighborhood for a long period of time. You want to be able to be the conduit to the local community as well as provide them a space in which they could feel like they're at home. And that's why you do certain services like be able to deliver groceries, for example.
Exactly, which is why we established Homemade at Hawthorn. Homemade at Hawthorn is that connection to the guest's routine, that guest's familiarity with their own lifestyle. We went out, we hired 2 chefs, 2 nationally recognized chefs, 2 very different cuisines. We were talking about hamburgers earlier.
Yes.
How long is it before you get tired of ordering a hockey puck hamburger to your guest room with soggy French fries? I don't know of anything worse other than a pizza to the room where the cheese is stuck to the top of the box.
Okay, so we're not talking about Hawthorn's located next to In-N-Out Burgers then. Everywhere else, though.
Yeah, I think you could do In-N-Out Burger for a couple of weeks at least.
I agree. I know. There's something about, when I travel, obviously I love to eat out, and obviously I love to have local food and some, comfort food favorites. But over time, if I'm there, 5 days a week, 2 weeks, up to that year that you're talking about, well, then it's going to be more important for me to have control over the food that I have in the room. So tell me a little bit about how I feel like what you're trying to do is be like the Blue Apron service for your guests within the hotel by partnering with Chef Hari Nayak and Chef James Regato to create menus and recipes.
That's absolutely correct. We created the recipes. So we've got about 28 recipes online, seasonal recipes that the gentlemen that you just mentioned have done for us. Mm-hmm. Hari focuses on Southeast Asian cuisine, Yum. And James Regato focusing on American and Italian. Personally, we created the recipes. We put them out there for our guests to experience. We've asked our hotels to engage. We have over 50% engagement from our hotels who are actively engaged in creating that experience for our guest, meaning Hawthorn Suites by Wyndham has one night a week social reception. Mm-hmm. Our hotels, I'll give you an example, our hotel in Denver Tech,
right,
does the reception where they actually cook one of the recipes each week. Now, in Denver, they do the social reception 3 nights a week, but at least one night a week, Francis Hedrick is going downstairs, cooking the meal for the guests, in front of the guests, showing the recipe, experiencing what the food process looks like, having the guests engage, mm-hmm. and they go back to their rooms and experience the same process.
Well, if I know Denver pretty well, then it sounds like you're really just torturing a lot of guests who may have the munchies at that time by making them watch and not eat right away. But hey, little legal cannabis humor there for everybody.
Denver might be an example.
Yeah, I love that because you're really connecting much better with the customers, right? It's something that means something to them, and they could learn something too, which I think connects them better with the property in which they're staying.
Well, food is very personal.
Yes.
When you get into the topic of food, people are very particular. So the diversity in the recipes has, for us, created an unyielding, incredible opportunity for us to connect with a very diverse group of customers and clientele.
Yes, and
we have
go on.
Many recipes with curry and heavy spices.
You do. Harissa spiced bean salad with walnuts, for example. I mean, that sounds absolutely delicious.
How fantastic is that?
The photograph here looks fantastic, and I always think about the recipes that I cook at home and how they never look like the photographs, but it is a gorgeous picture there. Asian chili burgers, poached peaches with mint and vanilla as dessert, tofu or chicken with tomato and shallot chutney. And a cool thing that you're doing here is you're not just saying what you have, but you can download individual recipes or even your full cookbook, an e-cookbook for spring and summer 2017, which is interesting and super innovative to me at a mid-scale hotel. Sometimes you see great recipes from ultra super luxury hotel that none of us could create, but these recipes look interesting, they look manageable, and it looks like something I could do at home with my family because they all take 30 minutes or less.
Well, it's a great point. Our guests are now taking these recipes home with them after their stay with us. And we've created such a connection with the guests that we have hotels that actually stay in touch with the guests where the staff is invited to weddings or they're invited to special events or the families that have stayed with us.
Wow.
So when you asked me before about some of the guests that are staying with us, yeah, we work with a lot of business transient and groups from corporate America. Mm-hmm. But we have a lot of leisure guests who stay with us while their home is being renovated or while they're relocating into a marketplace. Give you an idea, in Wheeling, West Virginia, we had a guest who was relocating into the marketplace who took one of the recipes and now they are changing them to their own liking.
Right.
Where we have a spicy meatball recipe. Instead of ground beef, they're using their own chicken. In Northbrook, outside of Chicago, we have guests that are so thoughtful about the approach we took to the recipe creation, and then they're going to social media to tell the world.
Fabulous.
So to your point before, so now we've created these recipes. Now, how do we make it easier on the guest to engage in that recipe? We have partnered with Instacart and Peapod.
Yep.
For the food delivery platform.
And
so
that has to do, and that's
recipe.
A function of where those services are available compared to the hotels, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So we have 8 pilot hotels so far.
Mm-hmm.
Philadelphia, Illinois, Denver, where Instacart or Peapod are available. And the social reviews have just been tremendous so far.
I would argue that you are correct. I think it's a great idea. And so if I order and I want to, for example, make scallops with coconut ginger curry, I'm sure you have a system in place where I could just order the ingredients for that particular dish.
Exactly. You can go to Instacart or Peapod, both, and either select the entire recipe.
Love it.
And have every ingredient delivered in one simple click. Or for those snack items that we were referring to earlier, you could go online and select any item the store sells. If you're looking for a gallon of milk.
Right, of course.
If you're looking for a special sauce or a particular cereal.
Yeah. For me, that would be Cocoa Pebbles and Lucky Charms. That would be...
I'm a frosted wheat guy, but hey, to each his own.
Well, yeah, every once in a while I do. It's funny. I really... Every, 10 years or so, I'd like to have a bowl of Lucky Charms or those Cocoa Pebbles. I never understood the appeal of Fruity Pebbles. I found that to be very insulting to my 7-year-old self because it wasn't chocolate-based.
How dare they add fruit to a wholesome meal like that?
Hey, listen, man, Fruit Loops had it all covered. I think the Pebbles were posers on this particular issue. But I don't want to get too involved on a rant here about cereal and where it's gone and how we're completely misguided as a cereal for getting away from the classics. We'll save that for another show. But Larry, let's talk a little bit more about where you think that the brand is headed to in the future and what it's like being part of the Windham family. I'm going to say it's probably been 7 or 8 years now that it's been owned by Wyndham. Although my
2008.
2008. Oh, I almost had it. Oh, about 9 years.
Yep. Wyndham purchased the brand in 2008. The brand downsized a little bit.
Yep.
In order to create a more core offering. Mm-hmm. We currently have about 28 hotels, as I said, in the pipeline. 95% of that is new construction. So you can see the evolution of the brand as we move forward is more towards the prototype that we offer our developers and owners. It is a traditional perspective on development at this point as it relates to where the brand wants to be.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. So what are the costs then, no land, blah, 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 on average compared to building a different hotel? And then obviously you have a better base of and longer staying base of business. So how does all that financial model work for hoteliers interested in building one of these bad boys?
we value engineered the prototype to a point now where the latest open hotel in Fargo, North Dakota was built and open at $95,000 a key.
That's pretty good.
Which is fantastic. And the value engineering we've done and will continue to do will only make it more appealing to folks who are looking for that extended stay model. And the brand, the Hawthorn Suites, is a fantastic answer to mid-scale extended stay. The FF&E in these hotels is just of the highest caliber. It has great staying power as it relates to functionality and durability.
Right. Yeah. That's awesome. All right. So wrapping up here, Larry, anything else that we need to know about Hawthorn Suites by Wyndham, and maybe what your observations are and where you think the entire segment's going to be headed to in the future?
Well, we're focused on a couple of items related to, again, that routine. The whole world is focused on wellness. And I think it makes sense because it's not a trend. It's not a fad. It's not a fad, I should say.
It is not.
But it is absolutely a trend. And when you talk about trends with regard to wellness and with regard to food, I mean, when you look at food delivery and the way the next generations are living and that lifestyle, you see a tremendous uptick in the percentage of folks who are ordering food online and the amount of purchases online. So the Homemade at Hawthorn, the delivery platform that we created, and the food delivery mechanism just makes sense. When 7 out of 10 of us in the next 5 to 10 years will be ordering food online, when you travel for business, why wouldn't you want to take that with you? Look at the way folks are streaming entertainment online.
Yes.
When they travel, we on the Wingate brand here at Wyndham, we are piloting that casting right now, and it is shocking to me the percentage of guests who are using the casting and the percentage of time of day. The average use of that casting is about 4.5 hours a day.
Jeez.
And I thought, when do they work?
Yeah. Wow. Well, there was a time in my life when I would just leave the TV on and not really focus on it and then work. But
I may understand that.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
but I've got to some point in my life now where it's too distracting for me, and I either have to put on long jams from Fish or just have silence. Although I've been listening to a lot of Pink Floyd lately while working, because that kind of works nicely in the background.
And think about it, when you're in a hotel by yourself for a long-term stay, if you're there for 3 months, you miss that partnership, you miss that interaction with humans, which is why our downstairs, that communal environment that we've created outside at the fire pit or inside in the breakfast area in the social hours. I mean, people miss that.
Yeah, it's something that's really important and connects all people except me. I hate hanging out with people. I like to be alone in my room. It's so funny. I'm always anxious about having to do anything social, and I never want to do it. But then when I do it, I have a really good time. So that's my.
I think that's normal.
Yeah,
I really do.
I don't know.
Either that, or we're both very similar in that regard.
I think so. I'm really an introvert, although people don't believe that I am, because I do stuff like this and I do a lot of stuff on stage. But I get very hyper in public, and then I just want to be left alone at home. But I do love the idea of hanging out in back around the fire pit, having that communal atmosphere, having a glass of wine, watching that chef cook some food, really just feel like I'm at home and connecting with other people in a way that's meaningful and not what you totally get in a typical transient hotel experience with hi, goodbye, right?
Exactly. So in regard to where's this all heading?
Yes.
One of the key focuses as a brand leader is we have to be careful of amenity creep. I'm very concerned with the consideration of added amenities that don't have staying power. If staying longer, stay better is our vision, things like a longer telephone cord, if you remember those days,
right,
or a safe in the room in a business transient hotel, ensuring that that is a brand standard. Those things may not make sense tomorrow.
Right.
So identifying those amenities that are really going to make sense to a diverse group of customers, that's the focus. That's the key. Being able to identify what's going to stay and what will impact the customer and their guest and that guest's experience.
Yes, absolutely. I see too often that hotel brands put things in the room that they've decided guests want, but guests don't actually need, and it winds up costing owners of buildings a lot of money, doesn't add anything to the overall experience in aggregate, and it just doesn't make any sense. So you've got to keep a sharp eye on all of these items that you're putting in the rooms, or else the costs are just going to get out of control without adding any value.
Oh my gosh. I walked into a hotel. I was just in Louisiana this week. Walked into a competitor's hotel to meet with the owner.
Mm-hmm.
And the brand that shall remain nameless
mm-hmm.
required the hotel to repaint and order a table that was $15,000.
Oh, God.
A $15,000 table for an owner of a hotel that has 65 to 85 rooms. That's a big hit.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's rough, Larry. I mean, and that's why I urge everybody on the brand side of the equation, continue to work really closely with your franchisee boards and your membership boards, and really try to figure out what guests really, really need, not want. I say this all the time. I never had a hotel experience where I came home and said, wow, I've got to stay there again. That table was amazing. It's the people.
I completely agree with you.
It's the overall.
I agree with
you.
That's a fantastic insight.
It just drives me nuts. Sometimes we get so caught up as industry professionals that we lose sight of how our customers are actually seeing and experiencing the brand. One of the things that I have to urge everybody out there is get yourself out of your head. Ask your teenager what they would like, because they're going to give you the unvarnished truth, for example, not somebody in your company, right? I mean, at least that's my point of view. I won't ask you to say anything anti people in your company.
Well, my problem is with 25 years plus in the industry, I've always been on the owner-operator side of this.
Mm-hmm.
So my perspective is much different than many other brands that we compete with. I see it more prudently for my owners and operators.
Yes, good. And that's really important going forward. All right, Larry, we're pretty much out of time here. So any final thoughts? And this is a great place to give a shameless plug.
Hey, listen, Hawthorn Suites is the place to be, man. We are growing. We are making it happen for our guests. The guest experience is our number one focus, and give us a try. We're gonna turn you around. And our Windham Rewards program, our loyalty program, is bar none the best out there. And with the Hawthorn Suites side, it's the most robust program of any extended stay product on the market.
Great, I love it. And you have been winning awards for the program too, I believe. Correct?
Yes, we have. Yes,
Excellent.
we have.
Excellent. All right. Well, I love it. I appreciate it. Thanks for teaching me a lot today about the extended stay sector. And I want to thank everybody here for listening today to today's show. And make sure you drop me a line, Glenn@rouse.media, or find me on social media @TravelingGlenn. All the important things. We'll get all your questions answered and incorporate them into future shows. So I want to thank you, Larry, for being here today.
Thank you very much, sir.
And I want to thank all of you guys for listening. And I will be back next week. That is, unless I decide to give this all up and decide to, make announcements on buses coming to Atlantic City. Hey, I got some coupons for you. See you guys next week. Thanks again.
Thanks so much for listening to No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast, with your host, Glenn Hausman, online at rouse.media, on Twitter @TravelingGlenn, and on Facebook.com/Glenn.Hausman. We'll catch you next time.